I mean, come on. You got great music, a painting, amazing food at coffee hour, and Elijah. So there you go. Happy Easter. The sermon's just icing, right? So the title of my sermon today is Resurrection Biscuits. Easter, not surprisingly, reminds me of resurrection. And resurrection then reminds me of death. And death reminds me of my grandmother's biscuits. I mean, I know that's so rude to say, but down south, as you know, you can say anything you want about anybody you want as long as you end the phrase with, say it with me, bless your heart. Okay. So, yeah, death reminds me of my grandmother's biscuits. Bless her heart. Now, let me be clear. I'm talking about my dad's mom. My grandmother on my mother's side was a biscuit whisperer. I mean, her biscuits would have made Jesus want to leave the tomb early, like 2 days early, right? But my dad's mom, Ganny, maybe not so much. Now, don't get me wrong. Ganny had wonderful traits. She was the sweetest, nicest individual. She had this beautiful garden. She raised 2 beautiful boys. She crocheted. She had a pecan grove in her backyard, and she was in church every time the door opened, right? Cooking, however, was not the gift bestowed on this lovely child of God, especially biscuits. The problem was that she was not a big believer in things like baking soda or baking powder, which, as most of you know, is the key ingredient. And without it, light, happy, fluffy biscuits become heavy and sad and flat. To be honest, Ganny's biscuits looked a little more like shot puts than biscuits. And my uncle used to joke that if you dropped those biscuits on the floor, they would wake the dead. Thus their name, Resurrection Biscuits. Every Easter, I always think about Ganny, bless her heart, and those biscuits. Because, it's not just biscuits that suffer when a key ingredient is missing. Life without its key ingredient, life without the resurrection can be heavy and sad and flat. I mean, let's be honest. How many people do you know that are walking this earth physically alive, but dead of spirit? I mean, a lot, right? Maybe you're one of them. We've all been there. I mean, it's so easy to get beaten down in this life. I mean, it's easy to celebrate like Easter on a beautiful day like this with all these wonderful children and all this great music. But what about tomorrow morning when the alarm clock goes off at 6 a.m. and our spirits sink? Where's the resurrection then? I mean, where's the resurrection when we work night and day in a thankless job just to find ourselves getting deeper and deeper in debt? Where's the resurrection when our child gets caught in an ugly cycle of drugs and alcohol and they start to slip away? Where's the resurrection when every day we find ourselves paralyzed with fear, worrying that we aren't as good as everybody else thinks we are? Where's the resurrection when every morning that we wake up, we have to battle through chronic pain just to get out of bed? Where's the resurrection when cancer dive bombs into our lives and threatens everything we know to be dear? Where's the resurrection when we watch as our parent or loved one is stolen slowly by the ravages of Alzheimer's or dementia? Where's the resurrection when we wake up one morning and realize that nothing, absolutely nothing, matters to us anymore? I mean, where's the resurrection then? Friends, it's not just resurrection after death we're talking about. It's resurrection during life. So back to the biscuits. One time I took a little peek in Ganey's pantry just to see what ingredients were actually in there. And do you know what I found? Baking soda and baking powder right there. Now, granted, the containers were kind of wedged in the back behind like the Del Monte green beans and the instant coffee, but they were there. But hey, who are we to judge? Our key ingredient is sitting right there on the shelf in front of us as well. The resurrection right in front of us every day, and we miss it. Which is what happened in our Easter story today from the book of John. We all know the story. It was early in the morning, and Mary Magdalene was making biscuits. Just seeing if you're listening. Come on, y'all. No, she wasn't. She wasn't making biscuits. You got somebody's playing Roblox on their phone. Come on, y'all, with me. Stay with me. Stay with me. It was early in the morning, and Mary Magdalene comes to the garden. She's the first one there. She finds the stone rolled away and Jesus missing. So she runs to tell the disciples. The disciples come, they look, they're not sure, they leave. Bless their hearts. But Mary stays. And so here we are, in the wee hours of the morning in a dark, damp, probably foggy burial site. And understandably, Mary starts crying. And she looks in the tomb and she finds two angels that say, "Why are you weeping?" Mary says, "Well, they've taken my Lord and I don't know where he is." And then Mary hears a voice behind her and turns, and it's Jesus. It's the resurrected Jesus, and she doesn't even know him. Now, the Bible doesn't really tell us why she doesn't know him. Maybe she was in shock from all that had gone down in the past couple of days. Maybe it was just too dark. Maybe he appeared in a different image than she expected or knew, whatever. She didn't recognize him. And she doesn't even recognize him when he speaks to her and says, "Woman, why are you crying? For whom are you looking?" But then Jesus speaks her name, Mary. And the second she hears that, she recognizes him and says, "Rabboni, Rabbi." I mean, I don't know, as a skeptical 21st century reader, it's kind of hard not to think, come on, Mary. I mean, how could you not have recognized him? Jesus told everyone he was going to raise after 3 days. It's day 3. Hello. But oh, how easy it is for us to judge while we sit in our comfy pews in our beautiful church or in our living rooms or kitchens, if you're coming in live stream or for wherever you're listening. I mean, let me ask this. Would we know him? Like Mary, every single day of our lives, Jesus calls us by name. Do we hear him? Do we see the resurrection that is right in front of us? I don't think so. Now, in our defense, I think there's some reasons for that, some very legitimate reasons. Part of it, I think, is that we tend to go through life with our eyes clenched shut. We live braced for what we just know is the next blow that is coming. I mean, tragically, for some, that means physical blows. For others, it's emotional blows. For some, it's the unrelenting judgment and crushing inequalities. And for most of us, at least here in America, it's the terrifying and exhausting prospect of living through the next 8 months. Can I have an amen? Amen. Lord have mercy. As our own Reverend Dr. Cheryl Dudley wrote in a recent Lenten meditation, the national political season is in full throttle now, and I hope our hearts and our minds and our souls will survive it. The political rancor, the bombast it created, and the realities it revealed during the last presidential election are experiences many don't want to repeat. And she went on to say this, I know this much. I don't want to feel, to think, to shrink, and to resent like I have in previous national election seasons. It destroys so much. It destroys too much, especially in our hearts. I mean, friends, we miss the resurrection right in front of us because our eyes are just like clenched shut. And even if we do open our eyes, we never look up. I mean, some of you know that I fractured my ankle last November, and why I really wanted to tell everybody I met that I did it in a ski accident in Zermatt. The truth is, I tripped on the sidewalk like a block from here. You know, and the body heals up, but an unexpected consequence of that fall is that I look down way more than I used to. Because God forbid there might be another danger lurking in front of me. And when I was thinking about it recently, I thought, I think we live our lives that way that, we're afraid to look up. We look down, we focus on the dangers that are lurking in front of us, the potential obstacles, but we're afraid to look up at the horizon, at the possibilities, because we're afraid we might fall. We're afraid we might fail. I mean, we keep our eyes clenched shut, and even when we open them, we don't even look up. But there's a third reason that I think we miss the resurrected Christ, and that is because we see the world when we do look up with preconceived notions. Now, I think Ben and his Easter graffiti project is the classic example of this, and I want to thank him for teaching me so much about the art form of graffiti. You heard him talk to us today in the service about his art. And honestly, before I started chatting with Ben a year ago, I would see graffiti on a wall or building, and I would immediately think, vandalism. Maybe some of you did or do too. We see graffiti through all kind of preconceived notions like, oh, look at that random spray paint, or oh, look at that dangerous message, or oh, look at those gang signs. But Ben inspired me to be curious about graffiti, to ask questions. So I started meeting with other graffiti artists. I read about its history. I looked at all types of different graffiti. And you know what the biggest thing I learned by educating myself about graffiti was? You ready? That I have no idea what I'm talking about. Zero. None. Because it took looking at the art, learning about it, asking questions, being curious about it to realize the depth of my ignorance. I mean, as Ben said, this is a means of creating community. It's a means of creating beauty. It's an art form. But you know what? I think many of us come at graffiti like we come at the world, through a lens of preconceived notions. We aren't curious. We don't ask questions. And because of that, we miss the beauty. We miss the messages. We miss the humanity right in front of us. A couple of weeks ago, one of the most famous living graffiti artists, a guy named Banksy, secretly put up a new work. It was painted on the wall of a dilapidated building in North London, right behind this 50-year-old tree in declining health that had been severely cut back so that it didn't even leaf or blossom this spring. I mean, it was basically a skeleton of a tree until Banksy came in and decided to paint something behind it. Travis, would you show us that image? Look at that. The next morning, the neighbors in the neighborhood awoke to this wondrous sight of this old tree appearing to bloom. It's a resurrection of sorts in a place that you would least expect. It's a message of hope in a place of pain. Friends, where do you need the resurrection in your life? I was thinking about this question a couple of days ago, so I decided to take a break while I was writing this sermon and go down to Madison Square Park. It was 60 degrees. It was beautiful. It was crystal clear. So me and every other human being on the eastern seaboard was there. And as I sat there, I started playing a game in my head, and every single person that passed by, I was asking myself, where is the resurrection for them? Now, granted, a large majority of the folks walking by weren't Christian, probably weren't even religious. But that said, all people, no matter who they are, yearn for hope. All people yearn for a second chance. All people yearn for a new beginning. And so I ask, as people walk past, where's the resurrection for them? A young man came by very quickly, walking along, having a conversation in his AirPods. And I thought maybe the resurrection for him is to see the light at the end of a difficult work project. And then an elderly woman leaning over a walker slowly moved by, and she was bundled up in all this clothing. And I thought, well, maybe the resurrection for her is just feeling the warmth of the sun after a long winter. 2 benches down, there was a man sitting with his head in his hands, and who knows what pain he was carrying. I mean, perhaps the resurrection for him was simply to find peace or to reclaim a lost dream. There was a group doing yoga in the middle of the grass, and I thought, well, maybe their resurrection is the newfound flexibility, that vibrancy that one feels in one's body. About 20 feet away, a man was asleep in the grass. And I thought maybe the resurrection for him is just to find a bed. Farther away in the park, there were several men doing manual labor, putting up a giant tent in the park. And I thought maybe the resurrection for them is just getting through the day so they can go home to the people they love with a paycheck for dinner. And then there was this little girl, like a toddler, in a carriage, being pushed right by me. And every single person she passed, she'd raise her hand and go, "Hi." Very Elijah-esque, right? And when people would wave back, she would just explode with laughter. And I thought to myself, you know what? Maybe she is the resurrection, right? I mean, this joyful little child that exuded this message of all will be well. We are not alone. That joy actually can come in the morning. You know, life has many great truths, like this one, appropriate for the upcoming tax season. Are you ready? If you take the word "the" and you take the word IRS and you put them together, you get the word theirs. Okay? Takes a moment. People looking at it in their head, piecing it together. But it's a great truth, right? Another great truth in life is this. Deep down, the human spirit yearns for joy, yearns to soar. And then life gets in the way. Key ingredients go missing. And over time, our spirits sink and become sad and heavy and flat. We stop believing that hope is possible. We stop believing that joy is still possible. We stop believing that we can rise up and beyond the pain in which we are mired. You know, it's like the story of the great blues singer, some of you may know, Blind Willie Johnson from the 1920s. I mean, while he recorded some of the greatest blues music of all time, he lived the most tragic life imaginable. He was blinded by his stepmother at an early age, and later in life, his house caught on fire. And because he couldn't afford to move, he continued to live in the ruins of his burned down house, where eventually he died of pneumonia. And yet, you know where his music is right now? Where his spirit is right now? Soaring somewhere high above, light years away, as part of a sound recording representing all humanity carried by the Voyager 1 spacecraft launched to explore deep space and parts unknown. Right? It's possible to rise up and beyond the pain in which we are mired. It can happen. The Easter morning message is for everyone out there who feels like their dreams have been destroyed. It's for everyone who feels like their hopes have been dashed, their spirits crushed, because here is the good news of Easter morning. The risen Christ can take our sad, heavy, flat hearts and put back that key ingredient that makes them soar, so that our spirits are not stuck here in the ground. Our spirits are not dictated by human pain or loss or disappointment, so that our spirits aren't mired in a tomb. So, today, let's take a lesson from proper biscuit baking. Let us rise up. Let us stand up. Let us look up and see the resurrection that is unfolding in front of us, right here, right now. And the people said,